Welcome back to another fun-filled, exciting episode of Tiger Bytes. Today we're here with John Schmidt. He runs the online master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology here at Auburn. John, welcome.
Great. Good to be here.
You mentioned to me out in the hallway that you've been at Auburn for about 2 years now. Could you briefly overview your career and how you ended up here at Auburn?
Sure. So just real quickly, I served on active duty for about 35 years. And as part of that process, I worked in the Navy the last several years, and I had a chance to teach at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. And I really thought about it towards the end of my career about, being an academic. And so when I first retired, I ended up teaching online, mainly because I was away so much from home. It was just great to be able to work from home and be with my wife. But then this
Not for
opportunity,
Auburn. This was for
this for a different university, yeah. And then this opportunity came up, and actually works out that a friend of mine, Dr. Dan Svantek over in the psych department, he was my roommate in graduate school, and he told me that they had an opening and they were looking for somebody just like me who had a lot of online experience. And so I applied and fortunately got the job, and I've been here ever since.
Great. What's the basic structure of the online master's degree? How many credits is it? What are some of the topic areas that people cover? What sort of assignments do they have to do?
Yeah, well, the master's program in IO Psych, the online program, is designed to train practitioners, not researchers. So the focus is very, very applied, very, very practical in nature. The curriculum's got 10 courses in it. The 10 courses are broken out between core courses, where essentially are areas within which the Society of Industrial Organizational Psychology, SIOP, emphasizes that people should be trained in. And then we have the option for a few electives. So there's these 7 core courses, which cover things primarily in industrial psychology related to the foundations, IO Psych, research methods, training, personnel, core areas for IO psychology. And then on the O side, organizational dynamics, organizational change is emphasized. And then we have an array of elective courses, primarily in topics that are people very focused on today in industry, like organizational health psychology, occupational stress, coaching. So, and then we have a practicum course at the end. It's a capstone experience where people then get to do an applied project partnered with an industrial organization, and where they're doing something to essentially help them with doing better business, whether it's on the human resources side or organizational assessment. We've had some students do some very good projects who actually helped organizations which couldn't afford a consultant to actually come in. A couple were in a school system, for example, and they were able to get some pretty good support, and then the product at the end was actually used.
Nice. And how many students are in a typical cohort?
Well, right now, we just admit one cohort a year. We started out with essentially picking up about 30 students.
Okay.
We have an ample number of applicants every year, and now we've upped it to about 40 because we're able to handle that because of some additional staffing, which included me, and then secondarily because of some of the course offerings we have now. So it's a matter that we have enough elective courses that students can be a little more choosy with what they want that fits with their career needs. So that's where we're at right now, about 40. But the program right now, we've got fairly low level advertising because we just rely on people to search us out on the web as they're interested. We're listed as one of the programs with the Society of Industrial Organizational Psychology, but we don't do any marketing. Most of the schools that are out there that do online education, a lot of them are for-profit, and they do a lot of advertising, as you could see on television, et cetera. Right now, we just rely pretty much on folks that are interested in Auburn because of its reputation as an academic institution.
Right. Do you have a sense as to how many schools of Auburn's caliber, so putting aside, the online for-profit places that advertise on TV, like you said, but of a traditional university, how many programs are there like this?
There aren't too many. I mean, the real thing with our program that kind of separates us, distinguishes us from other programs, is that all the courses in our program are taught by the same faculty that teach graduate courses here on campus. We only have 2, if you will, adjunct instructors. One adjunct instructor actually works full-time here at Auburn. She's an Auburn graduate, and she teaches our ethics course, and she does work for the university. And then the other student is actually a consultant out in the industry, and she's also an Auburn graduate, but she was hand selected because of her niche area, working in occupational health psychology and organizational stress.
Mm. How does the asynchronous online format support working professionals with busy schedules? Do they get a week to finish small assignments, for example?
Well, that's a good point. Online education, obviously goes hand in glove with the ability to provide technology to people. And, with the advent of the internet and the explosion, if you will, the ability to do things effectively in an asynchronous environment, the program it became very, very strong. So, knowing adult learners, because these are adult learners and their schedules, we try to get things in such a way that it looks at attacking them from a practical standpoint. So, the things that they essentially are tasked to do in class, one, they have material to review, obviously, like everybody else would. They have some opportunity online to do some asynchronous practice with the material to get the concepts down. And then through various assignments, which sometimes it might be like a small case study, which they review and respond to, and then have other students do it, group work. And once again, you could do a lot of things, on the platforms today for asynchronous group work. And so we give them some flexibility. So usually in a module, they'll have about 2 weeks to get an assignment in, as opposed to having a weekly deadline.
Right.
But it helps with the give and take, if you will, that a lot of people experience in their workaday lives. And it's not just work, it's also family demands as well.
I'm curious about the teaching materials that they encounter online. Do you have, for example, hypothetical scenarios?
We use a lot of different resources. Of course, we try to make sure we're using the literature, and for the folks to kind of help them, because sometimes they don't have any exposure to some areas. There's usually a central book,
Mm,
but we try to make sure it's at the right level. It's not meant to be a highly technical book. It's a
PhD
very
kind
practical,
of.
more for at the master's level for practitioner. We do pull from the literature, so we do use articles from literature. We try to keep them current, and I'll discuss that in a minute, how we keep things current with Auburn Online. But the other part, aside from that, is also then we use videos that are available out there, and you'd be surprised how much is public access to people who use
On YouTube.
on YouTube, et cetera. And then we make sure we go through a process that we can use those. But they usually reinforce material, so a concept might be discussed. They have maybe some readings, and then they'll, maybe view a video with it. So, for example, in the coaching class, which is only offered during the summer, I tried to make sure we did that when we're looking at, like, for example, different coaching theories that might be out there, or coaching processes and techniques, especially when you're looking at coaching competencies and the practical application of ethics in coaching. A lot of good videos out there that are put out by some of the associations
Mhm.
that support coaching.
So you mentioned a moment ago keeping the readings current with the assistance of Auburn Online. What does that process look like?
Yeah, so when I came here, one of the really, really great things that I discovered was the fact that the course is not just being supported by professional instructional designers, is the fact that Auburn Online has a great process for making sure that everything's kept up to date, everything's working, and it's an annual process. So literally, the semester before a course is going to be taught again, they'll work with the instructor to go through everything in the course, um, student feedback surveys, et cetera, to go ahead and update the class to make sure that it meets the requirements that they have, and at the same time, um, ensuring that it's current material. So we're getting feedback. We're introduced that in the system. Our professors, obviously, they're all on top of the literature and what's current. And then the other piece is they're looking to see what's going on out in the market, what things are being used. And so adjustments are made every year.
Hmm. What sort of specific methods or tools do students learn to analyze and improve team dynamics within organizations? A lot of talk these days about team dynamics.
Sure. And we have in our curriculum, 3 different classes that
Mm,
probably touch on that pretty readily. So one, after they take foundations, which is kind of a content-oriented course to understand what I&O psychology is, but it covers the O piece, organizational psychology. Then they take research methods, and then the research methods course is broken out in such a way that they systematically work as a consultant with a notional company. I mean, it's not a real company, they're a notional company, and they step through all the processes for how you might do an assessment, to include, development of questions, application of those questions, collection of data, how it might be analyzed, and then eventually how it's presented. Then, of course, that's taught by Dan Svantek, who I mentioned earlier. Dan teaches our organizational change course, and he's an expert in organizational development. So in his class, they focus totally on just doing it for organizational change purposes. So how to do surveys and interviews, collect the data, but they're actually working with usually a real organization.
Mm-hmm.
So the good part is they got a chance to practice, and now they got a chance to apply. Then when they do their practicum, about a third of our students opt to do some sort of organizational assessment, organizational development project, and then they get to kind of put those skills in play semi-independently.
It would probably help viewers and listeners if I had you explain the difference between industrial psychology and organizational psychology.
Sure, and once again, it's not a totally artificial distinction, but you can kind of put it in two different categories. So from the standpoint of the I, okay, industrial psychology, we're looking at it from the standard kinds of things you might think of when you think of human resources. So selection, placement, training, performance appraisal, and then ancillary to that might also be like recruitment, in front of selection, and then when you're all the way on the back end, when it comes to performance appraisal and training, now you're also looking at employee development. So the programs and processes that support that, that's pretty much all on the O side. I mean the I side. On the O side, then, now we're looking at organizational behavior. We're looking at group dynamics, communications. We're looking at teamwork, team development, team effectiveness, motivation, leadership, those kinds of classic topics. And then at a little bit higher level, then you're looking at organizational dynamics, organizational structure, and then organizational development and how you essentially refine organizations. And finally, then organizational effectiveness. You're evaluating them.
What are some of the common career paths for graduates of your program, and how does the program prepare students for those roles? Are they mainly consultants? Do they work for a specific company to try to develop survey instruments and those sorts of things? What do they do after you're done with them?
Okay. Well, first let's talk about how they come to us and
Yeah.
what their goals are when they first show up. And this is typical for online education in a lot of instances, not necessarily just unique to us. So folks that are pursuing, getting a graduate degree, that are doing it online is because typically they're working full time for somebody. Okay. And then working full time for somebody, they can be in a different situation. It could be like, one person, um, I was an entry level position. I have 5, 6 years of experience now. I'm looking to get a graduate degree so I could be a little bit more professionally trained in a niche area that I'm working in. And I work in a company in HR. And a lot of times you'll have people that have an HR kind of a tie, whether they're helping with recruiting or selection or, performance appraisal systems or training. And then they'll seek out getting a degree in IO as opposed to maybe HR because they're trying to get a little bit more of the theoretical background that underscores, so to speak, what we do.
Right.
Whereas HR might be more practical in nature and not necessarily get to the theory part. So we see those people. We see people that are 20 years into their career, 15 years into their career, and they've been working for somebody else, and now they're starting to think about, yeah, I'd like to maybe work on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a practitioner-oriented degree. It's not meant to be people to be researchers. And so they'll get a master's with us, and maybe their second master's sometimes, because they may actually have gotten an MBA, but they decided they wanted to concentrate on being a consultant, for example. And then they get their degree with us, and then they branch out on their own. And sometimes it's kind of using current vernacular, I guess, a side gig. And then they may eventually, once they build their business space up, then go. And then recently, which is really kind of interesting, we've had about 3 or 4 students who already have consulting companies who decided they needed to polish their processes and get current with the literature. And, they're taking our program. They're putting in play immediately. And then one last one that we do have is we have some people that have been working for companies for a long period of time, and they just want to change.
Mm.
And in some of these cases, they might be fairly financially secure, or they just were interested in the topic and wanted to do something about it. We recently, he's going to be graduating this term. He is a corporate lawyer who just, he retired a couple of years ago, started here at Auburn, ended up going to Georgia because he met his sweetheart, his wife, and he went to law school eventually, but he wanted to get a degree from Auburn. Well, he came back to us, and he's done extremely well in the program, and he's one of our best ambassadors
Mm.
and telling folks, our praises.
And I'd be curious if you could talk about some specific examples of projects students have done that you were really excited about, that you saw as just extremely useful to the client.
Sure. Um, I'll give you three different sets of examples,
Sure.
and one's actually ongoing right now, and I won't mention the company's name, as you might expect. But
Right.
so we got a phone call, cold phone call. Somebody called in. The company's located out of Birmingham, and they said that they're having some challenges with recruitment and retention for truck drivers.
Mm.
And
Common problem.
yeah, actually in the trucking industry
Yeah,
right now, there's
yeah.
a huge shortage of truck drivers. And it's interesting because they're located in the state of Alabama. And, I just had a quick conversation with them about, things like, hey, have you partnered with some of the commercial driver's license, training organizations? Because in the state of Alabama, there's a number of community colleges which offer that. So it's not just kind of private venues, it's also
Right.
through the community college system. And, they knew of it because they hired some graduates, but they really hadn't partnered. And then I went through a few other, things with them about things they could possibly do. And I said, well, look, I'll come out, meet with you all, and we'll talk about it. But the key part is that I've got some graduate students here on campus. Now they're in a slightly different program. It's our advanced bachelor's to master's degree program. So these are essentially students in our undergraduate program who are trying to get a master's degree. So if they've got almost a 4.0, they allow them into this program. They stay a fifth year and they can actually earn a
Nice.
master's degree. So I started out with them in mind
Yeah.
because we want to have them physically in place. And then as it turns out, as the project developed, because they were going to make a little bit of money as part of it, I'm not getting paid. I'm doing it actually pro bono, supporting them. One of my online students had a job change and essentially lost their practicum project. She was able to participate. And so it worked out really well because she just graduated and she's, got a job from that. And these other two students now, they're about halfway through their practicum experience. They graduate this May, and they've already, provided a couple of very good deliverables to the customer. So that's one example. We've had a couple teachers, that are essentially, they're in the school system. Actually, one's actually assistant principal now as opposed to being a straight teacher, where they developed training programs for their organizations. Because we got to remember, schools, school districts, they're organizations just as much as a company that manufactures, products. So their products, kids, obviously, but they have to go through the same thing. And, the school systems a lot of times don't have necessarily the budget or the expertise to do these kinds of things internally. And so they went to, somebody higher up in the organization, superintendent, one case, another one was the principal, and said, I could help you with developing a training program for something they're trying to do. And they executed. They went ahead, they did the groundwork, did a needs analysis, did some job analysis to see what the requirements were, and then came up with a curriculum as well as the ability to evaluate that curriculum, and then presented it, and then supposedly they're being used. Now the practicum projects, depends on whether it's summer or spring. Practicum runs about 15 weeks, and so they have to kind of start and be done in 15 weeks. So we do some pre-work and actually give an orientation seminar before the semester that they start their practicum, to go over what the requirements are, both in terms of connecting with an organization, have a signed agreement in place, different sorts of training to make sure they do things in an ethical, practical way. And then systematically they do their project till finally at the end when they present it, and also have a final report. So we have to keep them pacing through that. So sometimes we have to kind of cut back a little bit on the scope of what has to be done to get done in time. But they are practical projects that get used. And then finally, we've had a couple people actually, they work as consultants, partnered with an organization that they actually are supporting, and they were able to leverage their work project to support a client.
Nice.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
That
brings me to my last question, which is, do you have a vision for the program, what you'd like it to look like in 5 years, 10 years?
Well, to start out with, one of the things that we're looking at is trying to make sure that we're properly servicing the needs of the state of Alabama. This is the way my take on it.
Right.
Auburn being a land-grant university, our customer base is supposed to be folks
Right.
that are
Sure.
here in Alabama. And that's why, for example, we went from a cohort acceptance of 30 to 40 because how many people were applying. So that's, one part. We're looking at things like having a certificate program. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody needs a master's degree.
Right.
They just need a few courses. So we're looking at having a certificate program developed. And the cool part is that they'll be able to do the certificate. And then if they feel like they need more, they could leverage the certificate and then do the master's degree.
Right.
So that's our main focus right now. There is some consideration also maybe of having a second admission cycle, but we're trying to keep the program small because we want to maintain quality.
Interesting. I guess another thing that's becoming popular these days are digital badges that people can then, you can earn the digital badge and then put it on places like LinkedIn, kind of sends a signal that you've accomplished mastered certain ideas.
Well, along those lines, we're looking this spring, for example, to have our inaugural kind of a hybrid conference.
Mm,
So we've graduated in the program now, I think about between 50 and 60 students. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. It's like 56 or something like that. And so we're looking to do this spring is have a conference where we'll have an on-site presence because there's a possibility some people in Auburn live in Auburn, some people live in Georgia, Atlanta area, et cetera, to have it. So we'll be in a set facility where students, current students, as well as students that have graduated from the program can come, and the students then can present their practicums. In some cases, this might be their first professional presentation,
right.
maybe not a presentation at work, but one, in a essentially academic type environment. But then the people who can't travel, obviously because of work or where they live, they could also come in virtually, but they could also then present. So that's one thing we're trying to do is to
Yeah.
get people that notion that just because you're not going to get a doctorate doesn't mean you can't be connected to do this, to include then understanding PSYOP and PSYOP membership, which we're trying to encourage people to do.
That seems like it might be a really nice way to keep alumni engaged. And, it's something I think universities don't necessarily do a great job of in general, turning a graduate into a lifelong learner. Development people, they keep in touch with alums, but I feel like from the academic side, there'd be a lot of benefits if we found ways to keep in touch with alums, and it sounds like that's what you're trying to
Well,
do.
that's a good point though. So a lot of times online education, people get their degree, they go to graduation, and then they're done. Exactly. But for us, one of the things we're looking at, and this is an initiative, with AU Online, is the courses we currently have, modularizing them because they are broken out in modules the way they're designed, but then they could actually offer for professional education, non-credit, those modules. Because, when a student goes through our curriculum and the course offerings, whatever they are at the time or what their needs are, pretty much dictates what they take. But once they're finished and they're done, well, what if they want to do some more?
Right.
So the opportunity would be, well, they could leverage some of the courses we currently have, but not necessarily have to apply to something or get another degree, et cetera.
Right.
And maybe it's just a module they need, a specific thing. So we're looking at breaking those things up right now into modules. And I forget the exact name of the program, but we do have one here on campus where people can do that.
Well, John, it's been great chatting with you and getting to know you a little bit. And I think your program's really intriguing. And of course, I'm real grateful for your longtime service to our wonderful country. That's it for this edition of Tiger Bytes. Please join us next time.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chandra Bowers, Associate Director for Learning Experience Design, and I'm thrilled to share with you how we at Auburn Online leverage data to maintain and enhance the quality of our student learning experiences. I'll walk you through Auburn Online's structured continuous improvement process and highlight how we uncover insights that guide our course design decisions. While personal experience is valuable, relying solely on it limits the depth of our conclusions. Online platforms provide us with access to rich data sources and provide us with practical, actionable ways to make data-informed course improvements. So what exactly is continuous improvement? At Auburn Online, continuous improvement is our data-informed approach to revising and enhancing online courses. We use insights gathered from various sources to improve student engagement and learning outcomes. It's important to note that not all courses undergo continuous improvement. This service is specifically implemented when departments or colleges engage in a service agreement with Auburn Online. Our continuous improvement process follows a structured 3-year cycle with specific activities recommended for each year. Let me walk you through what happens in each year of the cycle. During the first year, we recommend completing a learning analytics report. This comprehensive report analyzes data from our learning management system, Canvas, our video hosting platform, Panopto, and a 2-question Qualtrics survey embedded in each module to provide insights into how students are engaging with the course. Based on this analysis, our instructional designers provide specific recommendations for course revisions. Additionally, our instructional designers assist faculty in copying the master course to their live course sections, setting it up for launch with their students, and providing support throughout the semester. In the second year, we focus on one of several possible activities depending on the needs of the course and the program. One option is Canvas Outcomes implementation. Working with the Office of Academic Insight, our instructional designers map program outcomes to the assessments in the courses. This offers the means to pull data at both course and program levels for accreditation reports. Another option is completing a workload estimator. This tool establishes the number of hours of direct engagement required by students based on course readings, media, content, and assignments. It ensures that the rigor is appropriate for the course level and credit hours. Usability studies, conducted in partnership with the College of Liberal Arts Lab for Usability, Communication, Interaction, and Accessibility, or LUCIA, and student focus groups are additional options that offer insights into the student experience, helping us improve course and program designs. In the third year, we typically conduct a quality review focused on course design. This review is used to assess and certify the quality of the course design against established standards of excellence. Finally, our instructional designers create an instructor's guide, which provides a course roadmap for a new instructor with design decisions and underlying teaching methodologies. Our continuous improvement process is cyclical, fostering an ongoing loop of evaluation and improvement. It ensures that our online courses don't remain static, but evolve based on data, feedback, and best practices, and we're responsive to real student needs. We look forward to continuing this journey of continuous improvement together. War Eagle.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Tiger Bytes. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained some valuable insights. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. You can find us on all major platforms, and keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time on Tiger Bytes.